Young Arab executive finds African girl in the snow. Her handwritten note breaks his heart. The cold wind whipped through the city streets as Amir stepped out of his black SUV, his tailored suit barely shielding him from the bitter snowstorm. On the sidewalk, curled up near the entrance of an abandoned building, was something that made him stop mid-step. A young African girl, no older than 20, trembling, with snowflakes melting against her dark skin. Her clothes were thin, soaked, and not meant for this weather. But it wasn't just her fragile state that froze him. It was the small, crumpled piece of paper clutched tightly in her frozen hands. Amir knelt beside her, pulled the note free, and as he read the shaky, handwritten words, something inside him cracked open. The words were simple, yet devastating. Words that spoke of pain, loneliness, and one final goodbye. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on the notification bell. This helps us bring you more life-changing stories like this one. Amir Al-Fahim was used to commanding boardrooms, not sidewalks covered in slush and snow. The 31-year-old Arab executive, known across Dubai and London as one of the youngest CEOs in the real estate industry, was in New York City for a business merger. That morning, his schedule had been packed with back-to-back meetings, but something compelled him to leave the warmth of his hotel suite and take a walk. His driver, Mahmoud, had warned him. "Sir, the snow is getting worse. Let me drive you wherever you need to go." But Amir had waved him off. Now, as he turned a corner near a neglected part of the city, the biting wind cut through him. He pulled his Burberry coat tighter and shoved his gloved hands into his pockets. That's when he saw her. At first, he thought it was a pile of discarded clothes, but something about the way the bundle moved, how it trembled, caught his attention. He took cautious steps closer. His polished leather shoes crunched against the frozen sidewalk as he approached. She was small, fragile. Long braids fell over her shoulders, dusted with snow. Her skin, a deep mahogany, contrasted sharply with the white blanket surrounding her. She wore only a faded t-shirt and ripped jeans. Her bare arms were covered with goosebumps and turning slightly blue from the cold. Amir's heart pounded. Not the kind of adrenaline rush he felt during business negotiations, but something raw, instinctive. "Care," he whispered in Arabic without thinking, crouching down. "Are you okay?" No response. Her eyes were half closed, her lips slightly parted but too weak to speak. That's when he noticed the paper. Her right hand clutched it tightly, as if her very soul was inside that note. Gently, with trembling fingers, Amir pulled it from her grasp. The paper was damp from melted snow, the ink smudged, but the words were still legible. "If anyone finds me, please don't waste time. I just wanted someone to know I existed, even if it's too late." Amir stared at the note, feeling something heavy settle in his chest. The words played over and over in his mind. Despite all the boardroom victories, all the money he had made and the people he had out-negotiated, he had never felt this kind of helplessness. "No, not today," he murmured to himself. Without hesitation, Amir pulled off his coat and wrapped it around her. Then he took off his scarf and carefully placed it around her neck. The cold hit him instantly, but he didn't care. "Mahmoud!" Amir yelled, reaching for his phone to call his driver. Within minutes, the SUV pulled up, its headlights cutting through the swirling snow. Mahmoud jumped out, helping Amir lift the girl into the back seat. She was light, far too light, as though she hadn't eaten in days. During the drive to the hospital, Amir sat beside her, holding her icy hand in his. Every few seconds, he would glance at her pale face, silently willing her to stay with him. The doctors moved fast when they arrived. Severe hypothermia, dehydration, malnutrition. The list of concerns kept growing. As nurses wheeled her away on a gurney, Amir stood alone in the emergency room corridor, staring at the crumpled note still in his hand. For the first time in years, he felt powerless. His phone buzzed in his pocket. It was a reminder about the investor dinner scheduled for later that night. Amir ignored it. Business could wait. He folded the note carefully and placed it inside his wallet, right behind the photo of his late mother, a woman who used to tell him that true wealth was measured by how many lives you touched, not by the balance in your bank account. Taking a deep breath, Amir sat down in the waiting area, rubbing his hands together to warm them. The snowstorm outside raged on, but all he could think about was the girl with braids and the heartbreaking words she had written before she collapsed. He knew one thing for sure. He wasn't leaving that hospital until he knew she was going to live. The clock in the hospital waiting room ticked louder with each passing second. Amir sat motionless, elbows resting on his knees, hands clasped tightly as if holding himself together. His phone rang again. This time it was Karim, his CFO, calling from Dubai. "Amir, the board is waiting. The merger meeting starts in 2 hours. They need you on the call," Karim said, voice tight with urgency. Amir didn't even look at the screen. He ended the call without answering. For the first time in years, business could wait. A nurse finally approached. Her scrubs were blue, and her eyes were kind but tired. "Mr. She paused, unsure of how to address him. "Al-Fahim," Amir answered quickly, rising to his feet. "How is she?" The nurse gave a gentle nod. "She's stable for now. Severe hypothermia and dehydration. Malnourishment too. But she's young. Her body's fighting. She's in room 412 if you want to sit with her." Amir's chest loosened just a little. Without another word, he made his way down the hall, each step feeling heavier than the last. The hospital smelled like disinfectant and worry. When he entered room 412, the sight of her made him pause at the door. She lay curled up under a mountain of blankets, a thin oxygen tube resting under her nose. Her face although gaunt, was peaceful now. The snow and dirt from her skin had been washed away, revealing delicate features and high cheekbones. Her braids fanned across the pillow like a halo of dark threads. For a long moment, Amir just stood there, watching her breathe. A part of him screamed that this wasn't his responsibility. He was here for business, not for whatever this was. But another part of him, deeper, quieter, refused to leave. He pulled up a chair beside the bed and sat. Gently, he placed her crumpled note on the bedside table, where she could see it when she woke up. Hours passed. The snowstorm outside raged on, turning the city into a blur of white and gray. Amir barely noticed when Mahmud brought him coffee. He didn't drink it. Instead, he sat in silence, staring at the heart monitor, counting each slow beat like it was a fragile lifeline. Memories of his mother flooded back, how she used to volunteer at refugee shelters in Beirut when he was a child. She had often brought home strangers, feeding them, clothing them, telling Amir, "We don't choose when life asks us to care. We just say yes." He had almost forgotten those lessons. Just as Amir leaned forward to adjust the blanket over the girl, a soft, broken voice filled the air. Where am I?" Amir froze. Her eyelids fluttered open, revealing the softest shade of brown, deep and wide, like untouched earth. Panic settled into her gaze the moment she realized she was in a hospital room. "It's okay," Amir said quickly, raising his hands in a calming gesture. "You're safe. You passed out in the snow. I brought you here." She blinked, confusion clouding her expression. "Why?" she whispered. Amir opened his mouth, but hesitated. How could he explain it? The truth was, even he didn't fully understand. "Because someone had to," he finally said. Her lips quivered. She looked around, her eyes landing on the note he had placed beside her. In an instant, tears welled up in her eyes. She turned her face away, as though ashamed. "No one was supposed to find me," she murmured, voice cracking. Amir's throat tightened. "But I did." Silence stretched between them, filled only by the rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor. "What's your name?" Amir asked gently. She hesitated. "Zola." Amir smiled softly, repeating the name under his breath as if committing it to memory. "Zola. I'm Amir." She nodded weakly, her gaze drifting back to the note. Her hands gripped the blanket tighter, as if bracing for something terrible. Amir leaned closer, his voice low but firm. "Whatever made you write that, I need you to know. It's not too late." Zola squeezed her eyes shut, two lone tears slipping down her cheeks. For the first time since she had been found in the snow, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't invisible anymore. But as Amir sat there, watching her fall back into a restless sleep, He had no idea of the deeper scars she carried, or how much this moment would change both of their lives forever. Amir didn't sleep that night. He sat by the hospital window, staring at the snow-covered streets of Manhattan, lit only by the distant glow of street lamps. His phone buzzed every hour with missed calls and messages from his partners, lawyers, and even a few journalists speculating why the young Arab mogul had disappeared from all his scheduled meetings. But Amir couldn't leave. Something about Zola kept him anchored here. Her broken voice, the weight of her handwritten note, and the way her eyes reflected more pain than any business deal gone wrong ever could. By morning, the nurses informed him that Zola's condition was improving. She had been given warm fluids, food, and her vitals were stabilizing. Amir watched through the glass as a nurse tried to convince her to eat some oatmeal. Zola pushed the bowl away, turning her face to the wall. Amir sighed and walked into the room. The moment she noticed him, she sat up straighter, tugging the blanket higher around herself like a shield. "Good morning," he said softly. She didn't answer. "I thought you'd be hungry." Amir gestured to the untouched food. "Or maybe you just don't like hospital oatmeal." That pulled the tiniest flicker of a reaction, a slight lift of her eyebrow, but she stayed silent. Amir pulled the chair closer to her bed and sat down. "I'm not here to make you uncomfortable. I don't know. I felt like I needed to make sure you're okay." Zola finally turned her head, meeting his gaze with eyes filled with exhaustion and suspicion. "Why?" she asked. "Rich men like you don't care about girls like me." Her words hit harder than he expected. Amir swallowed hard. "Maybe that's true for some, but not for me. Not today." Silence again. Zola's eyes drifted toward the window, following the falling snow. "Where are you from?" Amir asked carefully. She hesitated, then spoke without looking at him. "Ghana. I came here 2 years ago." Alone. The word hovered in the air between them, unspoken but understood. "How long have you been out there?" Amir nodded toward the streets below. Her fingers twisted the edge of the blanket. "Does it matter?" she whispered. Amir leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees. "It matters to me." Zola exhaled shakily. "Too long." Her answer sounded final, as if reopening that chapter would be too painful. Amir noticed the dark circles under her eyes, the healing scars along her wrists, and the way she flinched every time the hospital door opened. "How did you end up there? In the snow?" he asked, choosing his words with care. Her lips trembled. For a second he thought she might shut down again. But then she spoke, voice barely audible. "I had a job, cleaning in a hotel downtown. They let me go 2 months ago when business got slow. After that, it was shelters, until they were full. Then, streets." She swallowed. The snow started 3 days ago. I had nowhere else to go. Amir felt a surge of anger, not at her, but at the system that let this happen. The same city that hosted billion-dollar galas and sold penthouses for millions, left people like Zola to die in the cold. "And the note?" he asked softly. Her shoulders curled inward. "I thought, if anyone found me, at least they'd know I was human once." Amir's throat tightened. Without thinking, he reached out and placed a hand over hers. She flinched at first, but didn't pull away. "You're still human," he said gently. "And you're still here." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Zola turned her head and finally met his eyes again. There was something there now. Not trust, not yet, but the tiniest flicker of hope. A nurse interrupted the moment, stepping in to check Zola's IV. Amir stood. "I'll come back later," he said, giving her a reassuring smile. But as he walked toward the door, Zola's quiet voice stopped him. "Why are you really doing this?" she asked. Amir turned, hands in his pockets, thinking carefully before answering. "Because once someone saved me when I didn't think I deserved it," he said. "Maybe this is me paying it forward." Then he left the room, but even as the door closed behind him, Amir knew this was far from over. What he didn't realize was that helping Zola would soon pull him into a storm of complications, both emotional and professional, that he hadn't seen coming. By the time Amir stepped outside the hospital, the snow had turned into gray slush. His expensive dress shoes splashed through puddles of melting ice as he crossed the parking lot toward his SUV. Mahmoud, his driver, opened the door with a worried glance. "Sir, the Dubai office has called 6 times. The London partners, too," Mahmoud said cautiously as Amir slid into the back seat. Amir rubbed his forehead, already feeling the headache building. "Take me to the hotel," he murmured. The drive back was quiet. Amir's mind wasn't on the merger deal anymore. It wasn't on the 7-figure contracts sitting in his email inbox, waiting for digital signatures. It wasn't even on the article trending online about how the young Arab tycoon had skipped a major investor summit. All he could think about was Zola, her trembling voice, that note, the hollow look in her eyes when she said no one cared, the way she clutched the blanket like it was her only shield against the world. By the time they reached the hotel, his assistant Hannah was already waiting in the lobby, pacing back and forth with 2 cell phones pressed against her ears. "Amir," she hissed the second she saw him. "Where have you been? The investors are furious. The board wants an emergency video conference in 15 minutes. There are rumors flying that you've fallen ill or—" She paused mid-sentence, lowering her voice. "Are you sick? You look pale." "I'm fine," Amir said flatly, brushing past her toward the elevator. "Set up the call in my suite." Moments later, sitting in front of his laptop, Amir stared at the screen where 7 high-profile executives filled the virtual conference window. Their faces were stern, their voices sharp. "Mr. Al-Fahim, you've missed 3 critical meetings," one board member said coldly. "Do you realize the damage this is doing to our reputation?" Another chimed in. "The merger with Harrington Group is hanging by a thread. Their lawyers are threatening to pull out. What's going on with you?" Amir took a slow breath. Normally, he would have countered with authority, flexed his charm, maybe even thrown in a strategic smile to win them over. But today, none of that felt important. "I had an emergency," he said simply. One of the older board members, Mr. Rahman, narrowed his eyes. "Personal or professional?" "Personal," Amir replied, tone leaving no room for debate. A heavy silence filled the call. "Amir, with all due respect, your personal life can't interfere with business at this level," Karim, his CFO, said carefully. "We're days away from signing one of the largest deals in the company's history. If Harrington walks, it's millions down the drain." Amir's eyes darkened. "If money is all we care about, maybe we've lost more than this deal." Before they could argue further, he ended the call. Hannah stormed into the room moments later. "Amir, what are you doing? This isn't you." Amir stood, grabbing his coat. "I need some air." "Are you going back to the hospital?" she asked, stunned. Amir didn't answer. He was already halfway out the door. Back in the hospital, Zola was sitting up for the first time, her frail body propped against pillows, a tray of untouched food beside her. The television on the wall played a muted newscast, showing stock prices and headlines about foreign investments. His world, 1,000,000 miles away from hers. When she noticed him standing at the door, she looked both relieved and confused. "I thought you wouldn't come back," she said softly. Amir walked over, pulling the chair closer. "I said I would." She fidgeted with the hospital bracelet around her wrist. "You look stressed." He laughed under his breath. "You could say that." For a few minutes they sat in comfortable silence. Finally, Zola spoke. "You're not like the other rich men I've met. Not that I've met many." Amir smiled, shaking his head. "Trust me, I'm no hero." She glanced at him, studying his tired eyes. "Maybe, but right now, you're the only person who makes me feel like I still matter." Her words hit him harder than any shareholder meeting ever could. As she slowly drifted back to sleep, Amir made a silent promise to himself. He wasn't going to abandon her. Not now. Not after finding her broken and alone in the snow. What Amir didn't realize was that this decision would soon push him toward the biggest risk of his life, one that could cost him not just his career, but his heart. 2 days later, Amir's world began to collapse. It started with a single phone call from Hannah, her voice shaking for the first time since she'd started working for him 5 years ago. "Amir, it's bad, really bad," she whispered. Amir stood outside the hospital, the cold air biting at his skin as he held the phone tightly to his ear. "What happened?" "They leaked photos," she said. "You carrying her into the hospital. The media is going crazy with it." Amir's stomach dropped. "Some tabloids are saying you were with a mystery homeless woman. Others are spinning it as some scandalous affair. The worst part? The Harrington group called. They're furious. They said associating with this kind of controversy could damage their brand reputation." Amir closed his eyes. Of course. In their world, image was everything. Even one photo of him helping someone like Zola, someone vulnerable, homeless, and visibly African, was enough to cause waves among investors who cared more about perception than reality. "We can fix this," Hannah continued quickly. "We'll release a statement saying you were volunteering at a shelter. Make it look like a charity thing. I'll draft it right now. Just stay away from the hospital for a while. Let this blow over." "No," Amir said immediately, his voice low but steady. "I'm not abandoning her." "Amir, listen to me." "I said no." He ended the call and stood there for a long moment, staring at the busy street as snowflakes started to fall again. When he walked back into Zola's room, she noticed something was wrong. Her smile, small but real for the first time since he'd met her, faded instantly. "What happened?" she asked softly. Amir hesitated. "Some people found out I brought you here. Now they're making up stories." Zola's expression hardened. "Because of me?" Amir sat down next to her. "Not because of you. Because people love to turn kindness into scandal when it suits them." She lowered her eyes, biting her bottom lip. "Maybe it's better if you just leave me alone. I don't want to ruin your life too." Amir reached for her hand. "Zola, you're not ruining anything. This is my choice." For a long moment, they sat there in silence. Finally, Zola let out a shaky breath. "You don't know me. You don't know what I've done, where I've been. Why would you risk everything for me?" Amir paused. The truth was, he didn't fully understand it himself. But deep down, he knew that walking away wasn't an option anymore. "I know enough," he said quietly. "I know you were left to freeze on a sidewalk. I know you wrote a goodbye note because you thought no one would care. And I know I care more than I should." Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. Before either of them could say more, the door burst open. It was Mr. Rahman, one of Amir's most influential board members, standing there in his long gray coat, his expression like stone. Amir, Mr. Rahman said sharply. We need to talk. Now. Zola froze, instinctively shrinking into the bed like she wanted to disappear. Amir stood slowly, giving her one last reassuring glance before following Mr. Rahman into the hallway. You're risking everything for this charity case? Mr. Rahman snapped, voice low but furious. The Harrington deal is dead. Investors are withdrawing. Your stock value is dropping by the hour. The press is painting you like some reckless romantic or worse. Unstable. Amir's jaw clenched. I don't care. Mr. Rahman took a threatening step forward. You should. You have employees. Families who depend on this company. Your legacy. Your father's legacy. Are you really willing to throw all that away? For a girl you met 2 days ago? Amir's heart pounded, but his voice stayed steady. If standing by her means losing all of that, then maybe none of it was worth what I thought it was. For the first time, Mr. Rahman looked truly stunned. Without waiting for another word, Amir turned and walked back toward Zola's room, leaving behind the man, the company, and the empire he had spent his whole adult life building. But as he opened the door and saw Zola's tear-streaked face, he knew. He was exactly where he needed to be. What Amir didn't know was that Zola's past was about to catch up with both of them, in ways he never could have imagined. Later that night, Amir found Zola sitting by the window, her blanket wrapped tightly around her shoulders. She stared at the snow falling outside, her eyes distant. Without turning, she spoke. I wasn't just homeless, Amir. He stepped closer. What do you mean? Her voice broke. I was running from a man who controlled me, forced me into things I never wanted. That's why I ended up in the streets. I chose cold and hunger over him. Amir's heart twisted. You don't have to run anymore, he said, kneeling beside her. Not while I'm here. For the first time, she looked at him with something close to trust. But deep inside, both of them knew. Her past wasn't done with her yet. 1 week later, Amir stood at the hospital entrance, holding out a warm winter coat. Zola stepped out carefully, her thin frame now stronger, her face brighter. Where are we going? She asked. To start over, he said, smiling. She slipped her hand into his, letting him lead the way. As they walked away together, the snow began to fall again. But this time, it didn't feel cold. Not for either of them. And somewhere deep inside, Amir knew that saving her had, in many ways, saved him too.